The Trade is brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.
Hello and welcome to The Trade. Before we get into the charts that matter, a quick look at what traders are watching out there. And Nvidia will invest $5 billion in Intel, throwing its heft behind the struggling US chipmaker just weeks after the White House engineered an extraordinary deal for the federal government to take a massive stake in the company. The Bank of Japan expected to keep interest rates steady as policymakers seek more clarity on whether the economy can withstand US President Trump's tariffs and growing signs of weakness in the American economy. And US vaccine advisors have voted to revise the use of one of two key childhood vaccines under review, another step in US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy's push to rewrite government immunisation policy. Let's get into the technicals. Andrew spoke earlier to Carly Garner from DeCarlyTrading.com, and she delved into the charts on her radar, notably in the coffee trade.
Spent enough time in Sydney, the Australia area, to know you guys take your coffee very seriously. So hopefully there's going to be some interest in today's charts. I will say that not everybody should actually be trading coffee futures, but for those that need to, for hedging purposes, or even those that do have a speculative nature, they might get something out of this. But in the big picture, what I really wanted to point out also is coffee has been behaving very erratic all year. It started in late 2024 and it's gotten even crazier in 2025. But I'd like to, before I start talking about coffee, I just want to mention one thing. Aside from coffee and livestock, and take out the precious metals, if you look at commodity indices, almost all commodities in the indices themselves, if you pull out precious metals, are trading in bear market territory. In fact, we're trolling the lows that we saw in 2019, 2020. So coffee is actually an exception in that the prices are still wildly high and it's showing inflationary. But all other commodities, copper, grains, oil, natural gas, you name it, they're trading at much, much lower levels. So it's an interesting dynamic, and we're in an opposite end of the spectrum here in coffee. But what we've seen in coffee, if you look at the monthly chart, it dates back about 20 years that we're looking here. And what I've noticed is coffee has a couple of tendencies. First of all, it tends to peak out in September or October. And prior to that peak out, and I'm talking about bull markets in coffee, not just necessarily a normal year, but this is the fourth bull market we've had in the last 20 years. And they've all had the same pattern. They basically put in some sort of high in April and May, earlier in the year, and then they sell off sometimes 20-30%. In 2025 we saw this 30% pullback between the May high and now in the last rally, and then we get some sort of last hurrah rally. That's what I call it. It's kind of just the last leg of the bull market, and I think that's what we're experiencing now in coffee. And in fact, this chart was taken just a couple of days ago, and a lot can happen in a couple of days. So we did in fact put in some sort of a double top, retest that trend line. You can see it started way back in 2011, and here we are testing it again this month. And another thing to note in this chart is the RSI, which is the relative strength index. It kind of shows us where the momentum in the market is. And we've noticed in each of the previous bull markets in coffee, we've had some sort of like parabolic move in the RSI as the market makes its initial rally, and then it pulls back, and then on the second rally, the RSI lags, meaning there's some divergence. So as the futures markets are moving higher, the RSI is kind of sluggish. And we've noticed that in the previous three bear markets, or I should say bull market tops. And we're getting a bit of a repeat this time around. So I feel pretty confident about the worst being over for those of us that drink and enjoy coffee.
All right.
And
so
confirming...
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
No, just in terms of the second chart here, why have you highlighted mid-September then?
Right. So as we saw in the previous chart, there tends to be bull market, September, October tends to be a bull market killer. But if you look at the data over the last 15 years, even on a normal year, that tends to be the case. For whatever reason, I think it might be currency related, and we'll talk about that in a minute. but also just seasonality as far as weather and things like that. For whatever reason, in mid-September, coffee futures tend to pull back pretty significantly. And so I think that's exactly what we're seeing. So if coffee has a chance at turning around, and if the bears have a chance at changing the trend, it's going to be mid-September through October.
Now, you talk about currencies. Let's go there. We'll bring up the next chart then. In particular, is there a correlation with the currency of one of the major producers, of course, Brazil?
Correct. So Brazil obviously is a primary producer of coffee, and the market tends to follow the Brazilian real. Now, it's not a perfect correlation. Sometimes it breaks, sometimes it's stronger than other times. But in 2025, it's been pretty steady. As the US dollar weakens and the real strengthens, it's been pulling coffee prices up, and that's been a pretty reliable indicator. But although that's worked thus far for the coffee bulls, I think it might start working against them sooner rather than later. And the reason I say that is we're coming up against a 200-week moving average. That's the orange line on that chart. You can see it happens to come in right at a trend line. Oddly enough, these sorts of moving averages and trend lines tend to come in around the same price often. Mathematically, it shouldn't happen, but for some reason, it happens a lot. And so when you get a signal like that, two major significant resistance areas coming in at the same area, it's really difficult for a market to press through that unless there's some super surprising fundamental story that comes along. And I doubt we're going to see that. I think we've probably reached some sort of extreme pessimism in the dollar and extreme optimism in most other major currencies.
So, Carly, who do you see as the winners here? Those who like their coffee, the consumers, or perhaps those willing to trade those futures or options?
Well, I mean, again, speculating in coffee is a really tough game, and I do it for a living. I'm a broker. I help people do those sorts of things, but it's not for everybody, especially in coffee. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a really treacherous market. I mean, just yesterday's move was 33 cents in coffee, so we're talking like each contract is, that doesn't happen often, but you could expect to see anywhere from a $5,000 to $15,000 move in a single trading session. That's the kind of craziness that goes on there. So it's not for everybody, but what I will say is anybody that's investing in stocks that are hospitality stocks, this is important to them. And even more important as a consumer, as you mentioned, I love my coffee, and seeing it go from 99 cents a pound in 2019 to $4 a pound is a little bit shocking. But I think the worst is behind us. I think it gets better from here as a consumer.
And that does it for this edition of The Trade. Be sure to join us on Monday.
The Trade was brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.